So here we are, we have made it to day 11 in our Beatles 12 Days of Christmas. Who are the 11? Well, these are 11 singers backed by the Beatles. Can you imagine having the Beatles as your backing band? Now, they actually backed a number of artists. I'm going to go through some of the most important. The first one, and it's a key date in Beatles history, is the 15th of October 1960. That is when, for the very first time, John, Paul, George and Ringo appear on a record. This was when Lou Walters, who is the bass player and ballad singer in Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, decided to make a record out in Hamburg. So he brings his drummer, Ringo, along, and then their mates, John, Paul and George, from the Beatles. Now, this record, we have photos of it, but sadly, it's been lost. There may have been 2 copies, but they've gone. But what a day that would have been. And if only that record would turn up, the Holy Grail. So that's our first one. Now, after that, we've got March 1961 back in Liverpool. And of course, the Beatles are playing normally 3 times a day. So they've been playing it so long that John's voice is gone. They're down at the Cavern. And John obviously cannot sing. One of the guys, a local fella called Steve Calrow, he was around. So he said to Steve, do us a favour, can you sing vocals? And so for that one night only, Steve Calrow, 15th of March 1961, is the singer for the Beatles with his backing band there. Next, we go back to Hamburg for 2 artists, one of them who was born in Liverpool. His act was known as Buddy Britain because he did a Buddy Holly tribute act, and he looked like him, as you can see. So they backed him on stage in Hamburg, and also another British singer called Tanya Day. And we actually have a photo of her singing with the Beatles as backing band. She had a couple of hits over here, but nothing massive. We're back in Liverpool. And one of the big artists to appear for Brian Epstein was Cilla Black, born Priscilla White, wrongly nicknamed Cilla Black by Bill Harry in Merseybeat. Cilla had an incredible voice, and she would get up and sing with a number of the groups, particularly King Size Taylor and the Dominoes or the Big Three. But she did get up and sing with the Beatles. It didn't go that well because they played it in a different key to that she sang in, so it wasn't great. But Cilla, cloakroom girl at the Cavern, went on to be a huge singing star with a number of hits. But as Brian had predicted, she could do a bit of everything. And as an all-round entertainer, she was a TV star in the UK for decades afterwards. So they backed Cilla Black. Next one, Davey Jones. Not Davey Jones from the Monkees, but an American black soul singer called Davey Jones. He was over touring in the UK, and the Beatles backed him at the Cavern and at the Tower Ballroom. Now, this was a guy they'd met out in Hamburg. See, Hamburg crops up all the time, doesn't it? So when he was touring over in Liverpool, the Beatles acted as his backing band. Apparently he was well known for certain substances, as Bob Wooler in particular found out to his cost. Let's not say anything more about that one. Back in Hamburg again, and one of their heroes they got to play on stage with, Gene Vincent. What a legend this guy was. Go back to the very beginning. I think of the day John met Paul, and John says that was the first day he did Bebop-A-Lula. Think of one of the reasons why the Beatles, as John, Paul, George and Stuart, are at the Liverpool Stadium watching Gene Vincent in concert just after Eddie Cochran had been killed. That's what spurred them to go and see Alan Williams and ask him to be their manager. So a great honour for them to play with Gene Vincent out in Hamburg. Strange one. Probably a name you've never heard of, Simone Jackson. 15-year-old singing sensation, apparently, in the UK. And so when she came to Liverpool, the Beatles acted as her backing singer. They backed her 12th of September 1962. So this is just after they've come back from their second session at Abbey Road with George Martin, of course, with Ringo Starr now as the drummer. At age 15, she had this hit, which was going to be massive and launch this long career, called Pop Pop Pie. It didn't really happen. And it was Pop Pop Goodbye, I'm afraid, for Simone Jackson. But she can claim to have the Beatles as her backing band. Next up, we've got Craig Douglas. Now, Craig Douglas became a big star here in the UK. And with his massive hit, Only 16, which was a multi-million seller, he topped the charts. He had a big career over here. So when he came to Liverpool, the Beatles acted as his backing band on stage at the Liverpool Empire. So again, he was a big star, which is just as the Beatles are starting to become recognised beyond Liverpool. Since the end of 1962, just after Love Me Do had come out. Finally, we're back to Hamburg for our last two singers they backed. The famous Star Club tapes. Yeah, remember those? I mean, they've been argued about for so many years. But as well as the Beatles performing live, one of their best friends, Horst Fascher, decided he wanted to get up and sing and brought up his brother Freddie as well. So that gives us 11 singers that the Beatles backed. It's not an exhaustive list. There are many more. But for our 12 days of Christmas, these are our 11 singers backed. One more day to go. What is our 12 going to be? Join me tomorrow and find out.